Oh,
Yes.
I got that copies of that. What had to do with somebody got enough of them. Over half, is there anybody else coming in? We were subpoenaed. We were subpoenaed.
Okay, we're ready to get started. Appropriations Economic Development on the House side, and for you folks in the audience, we are on the live on TV on the web, so I'm sure y'all know that, being the PSC and Soil Water Conservation. So first thing we're going to do, we've got a bill, House Bill 1022, and I was going to let Chairman Bridges, the author of the bill, go ahead and present it, because I know he's got other things he needs to do. So.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. House Bill 1122 does one thing. It adds one paragraph into present law. It allows the constitutional statewide elected officials to collect a per diem just like the General Assembly does if they live more than 50 miles away from the state capital. If they're required to live in a certain district, to be elected in that certain district, and their office is required to be here in Atlanta, it just allows them to collect per diem from the agency in which they're paid.
Any questions from anyone on this? My understanding is it only affects one person on the PSC. Is that correct?
Well, I hadn't driven the mileage from the Capitol to the other areas, but it does put statewide elected officials that come under this regulation.
Yeah, same guidelines we're under.
I'm sorry.
Same guidelines you and I are
Same that we are under, yes, sir.
Anybody have any questions? You want to ask a question?
Mr. Chairman, constitutional commissions, that would essentially include the Public Service Commission. Would that include other constitutionally elected officers?
It would include them if they're required to live in a certain district that's further than 50 miles away from home.
Okay.
But they got to be required to live in that district. You can take the agricultural commissioner. He can live anywhere in the state, so he could live near Atlanta if he wanted to.
I understand.
Okay, now hear a motion. Okay, all in favor say aye. Any opposed, like sign. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Why don't we go ahead and start off with soil water conservation and let their acting director come up and introduce himself to the full committee, and we're glad to have you this morning.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. My name is Brent Dykes. I'm acting director of the Soil and Water Commission. Our former director, Mr. Bennett, retired on November the 30th, so I've been acting since December. Appreciate the opportunity to be before you today. Tracking sheet document, page 51 of 60, House Budget Office, several items. First being a workers' compensation premium increase, which is standard across most agencies, an increase to our budget of a little over $3,100. Also, the next item under administration program, removing $175. That was an error that was made in last year's bill that came out in the budget. It's in other funds. We just asked them to remove that. The next two items are related to each other. Conservation of soil and water resources, we're removing or redirecting a little over $18,000 from that program into our ag water conservation program, ag water supplies, to better reflect some of the activities of our program staff in that area. They're dealing with our ag water catchment program and also our mobile irrigation lab and also our metering program. So we think it's a better reflection of our activities and time there to move those funds there in a redirection. The next item, remove funds for 4 contracts, removing $385,000 in federal funds. Those were 3 projects, one in the Upper Chat area, one in the Sugar Creek area of Middle Georgia, and one in the Richland Beaver Dam Creek area of Middle Georgia that have been completed, where we work with landowners to do best management practices. So we just asked them to remove those, $318,000. The next 2 items are related to each other in that we're asking to move $60,000 in a redirection from our water resources and land use planning program to our watershed flood control structure program to do some maintenance on some high hazard watershed structures, basically 4 structures in the North Georgia area that need some heavy maintenance, which includes tree removal, brush removal, and planting of some vegetation. That will be handled through a state bid if we're allowed to move that money, and we'll bid out the work for those 4 structures for the $60,000. And then the last item is basically just asking to remove a balance of $67,000 in a federal fund that was also completed. We were involved with some river basin planning. We've completed that work, and we're just asking to remove that from our budget. So those are the few small items we have in soil and water. Be glad to answer any questions if there are any, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Any questions for the acting director?
One question, Mr. Chairman, I appreciate it. When we're looking at the governor's recommendation for your per diem and expenses for the PSC, was there anything taken into account for the piece of legislation that Chairman Bridges just brought in, which will increase your per diem? It could potentially increase it up to about $45,000 a year.
I'm from the Soil and Water Commission.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry.
Representative.
Excuse me. Looking at the wrong sheet.
Representative Lutz, what was your question again? I'm sorry.
We would like an increase of that much, Representative, if we could get that. But oh, okay, well. Yes, sir.
Anybody else? Yes, Representative Hanna, we appreciate you joining us this morning.
This may be in the big budget, not this budget, but
Yes, sir.
the money for the metering, is that continuing?
Yes, sir. The metering is continuing. We are currently working with a $6.7 million budget to put on somewhere around 3,500 meters this year in the ag water program that's headed out of our Dawson facility, and we hope to go to 1 Georgia to get the 07 funding very soon. But that base is reflected in our total funds. It is. Yes, sir. Thank you for the question.
Anybody else? You do? Okay.
Director, the $67,000, is that
Yes, sir.
surplus that you're just putting back, lapse funds that we're on?
No, sir. Actually, that's a completed federal contract that was in our base budget. We've completed that work, have spent all that money, and we're just asking to take it out of our base budget.
Oh, okay.
Yes, sir. That $67,000 along with the $318,000 adds up to the $385,000 in federal funds that have all been expended. We're just asking to remove it from our base, so it's not reflected. Yes, sir.
Anybody else? Anybody else? Okay. Thank you for being here this
Thank
morning.
you, Chairman. Thank you.
Okay, next is the Public Service Commission, and I guess the new chairman of the PSC, the Honorable Stan Wise from reading that article in the paper. That was a good article. How about you?
If you like
Did
lies,
you pay them? Did you pay
lies
them
and
to write
deception is always a good thing, Mr. Chairman. I always feel uncomfortable when the General Assembly gets beat up
You didn't hear what
by
I
the
said.
newspaper. Sir, no, I'm sorry.
Did you pay them to write that article?
If I did, it would have been a little different. But good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. I'm Stan Wise, and I'm joined by my colleagues, Doug Everett, David Burgess, our budget officer, Greg Peacock, and our legislative liaison, Bill Edge. Just briefly, we're here to ask for some additional monies in our 2006 amended for the fuel case with Georgia Power, Savannah Electric, approximately $800 million in unfunded and under-recovered fuel costs by the companies. Requires us to have a fuel case to look at that, and we need $50,000 for that in that 2000 amended budget. In the governor's 2007 $200,000 enhancement to hire the consultants and experts in our case. As the roles and responsibility of the commission continue to expand, many new companies in this competitive model come to play, and less funding, less and less employees, it is very important that we have the opportunity to hire outside consultants. A benefit to the state is, of course, they're not full-time. They're only here for the cases that they're hired to help with, and that it is essential that the commission be funded in that way. I'm sorry, that was 2007.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. So that's all they want to hear today? It's 2006? All right. Well,
Yeah, we're going to make you come back for 2007.
all right, sir.
Now, the $50,000 that you need now for the rate case, is it in the amended? It is, or isn't?
It is not.
So you're asking for another $50,000.
Part of the problem, Mr. Chairman, is that the announced merger of Savannah Electric and Georgia Power has exacerbated this issue, and it's something that is continuing to evolve as the approval process goes on with Savannah being merged into Georgia Power. And so we're going to put those two cases together.
My understanding is anytime a utility wants to file a rate case, they can do it now anytime they want to do it. Is that correct?
Unless there's a prior agreement not to. In a previous case, it would have precluded them from doing it. In a stipulation before the commission, they would not, if in fact that was the case. But in the case of a fuel case like what we're looking at here, is fuel by statute is allowed to be recovered dollar for dollar if it's prudently expended. And that's what we're looking at here. And so they are under recovered $800 million, and they're coming in asking for an opportunity to recover that cost. We have to have a hearing and a case to justify what that number is, what the actual number is, and how it's recovered over what period of time from the ratepayer.
What utility would it not affect if on fuel recovery?
AGL.
Okay.
Theirs is a different world because the marketers bear the risk on that. But we have a different form with AGL, and we have a capacity case with them where we determine if they're bringing enough gas to the marketplace as required by the marketers.
Okay. Any other questions from the committee? Mr. Forrester, we appreciate you coming. We've got Chairman Harbin with us this morning. Chairman Harbin, good to have you here. Would you like to make some comments? Okay. Thank you for being here. Where are you? Okay. Anybody else? So 50,000 is what you need.
Yes, sir.
Amended. Okay. Thank you for being here.
Thank you, sir.
Any other further questions or comments from the committee? Everybody awake?
Mr. Chairman, the 50,000 doesn't show up on the tracking sheet. Is that something that's going to be added to it or requested later on?
Yes, sir. We'll have to find the money and add it to their budget. We did that last year.
That'd be those six.
Correct. And they, in defense of the PSC, they usually don't know when these rate cases are going to come, and of course they have to have their expert witness, third party usually come in. Of course, they have staff member people that do it as well. So. Representative Lunsford, do you want to ask that question you were asking a while ago?
Well, Mr. Chairman, I think it's going to apply to the 07 budget more than the 06. So the question could still arise, though, with the legislation that Chairman Bridges is proposing. If that legislation passed the House, we would have to make an add to
That's correct, yeah.
So if you took $128 times 5 days per week, you could potentially be higher than that.
Well, but this is what we anticipate on the basis of probably just a housing allowance,
Yes, sir.
and not for 365 days a year.
Well, I don't think we're allowed to pull it on Saturday or Sunday.
Well, but not even, it probably would be 5 days a week. In
Chairman.
fact, I think it may be better if you allow Commissioner Everett to respond to that.
Yeah, Chairman, why don't you come back to the mic since we're on,
Okay, so I anticipate it being $12,000 to $13,000 a year, and that's and we wouldn't expect to see the funding to be any more than that.
But you would need an increase, Mr. Chairman.
To-
In your 07 for your per diem.
Yes, sir. If in fact this bill passes.
Thank you, sir.
All right.
That's just my only question. We don't want to come up short and then have to do it again and then amend it in 07. We want short per diem.
And I appreciate that very much. Thank you.
thank you, Mr. Chairman. Commissioner Everett, you had your hand up. You want to make any comment?
No,
You need to come to the mic since we're on the web here.
He stated correctly. It's about $12,000–13,000 a year because of the fact that I have an office in South Georgia that I also foot the bill out of my own pocket and don't cost the state anything. And so I'm there usually 1 to 2 days instead of I'm only up here 3 nights. But the bill, what it says is only motel rooms. It doesn't say per diem such as y'all. And my motel bills run me around $80 a night. So that's all.
Thank you. Any other questions, comments? Okay. Thank you all for being here. We'll meet again in the morning at 8 o'clock.